If you are new to the church, have just joined us, maybe been away for a long time, we're starting a brand new series today, and a new series beginning is just a good place to jump in. As we take one topic and we talk about it for the next 3 weeks, that's where we're going to go. Let me just share with you my heart for the next few moments as we begin today. And I want to talk to you about people that you know. I want to talk to you about maybe where you're at in life right now. That a lot of people that we know don't think too much about God until there's a need. And we don't think much about God when things are going well. But then when disaster comes or our level of comfort gets rocked a little bit, we tend to think about God a little bit more in those moments. And maybe we have had just enough contact with church that we know that when difficulties arise, we're supposed to pray. And so we pray, and our prayer might sound something like this: "Oh God, where are you?" Because we're in a moment of disaster, and then as soon as we're done praying, it just seems so silent. And it seems what makes that even worse for us is that other people pray, and God just seems to answer their prayers. Everything just works out for them in life. I mean, the job works out. They got a great wife, a great family, a great home, great job. Everything just seems to work for them. And every time they pray, God just seems to answer their prayers. I mean, and then to make it worse, you listen to them talk about their prayer life. "Yeah, well, I was at the mall the other day, and it was so busy. I mean, it was a Saturday, and the parking lot was packed, and I just was driving around. Oh, God, give me a parking spot up close. And I went down aisle 3, boom, there it was, front door." And you're listening to that going, "Really? Really? You're praying about a parking spot? My wife is threatening to leave me. I just got a diagnosis from the doctor that unless God intervenes, I'm going to die. My children have abandoned the faith. I don't have a job next week, and you're praying about a parking spot. Really? Doesn't it seem like some of the prayers you pray are so much bigger than other people's prayers? And no matter how much you pray, nothing seems to happen. So what do you do? What do you do when it feels like God is so far away?" Over the next 3 weeks, we're going to talk about 3 individuals that did everything right, but in the midst of doing everything right, they could have asked the question, "God, where are you?" Start today with a guy named John. If you've been in the church for any length of time, you know him as John the Baptist. Let me give you a little background to the story of John the Baptist. While John the Baptist is on the scene preaching the gospel, there's a guy who's a leader. He's not even a Jew. His name is Herod. And Herod was not really a name. Herod was a title. He worked for Rome because remember, the Romans occupied Israel. Herod becomes the man who's kind of boots on ground for Rome. His name really is Antipas. He's Herod Antipas. And he had a couple of brothers. There was Herod Archelaus, Herod Antipas, and Herod Philip. Philip was a half-brother to Antipas. And Philip had a wife, and her name was Herodias. And Herodias must have been a looker. She must have been pretty easy on the eyes. Because one day, Herod Antipas comes down to visit his brother, Philip. He looks at Philip's wife, and something happened. Their eyes met, and suddenly now there's a tryst, an affair. Herod Antipas wants to marry this woman. Her name is Herodias. And this is the same Herod who is known because he had his mother-in-law murdered, he had some of his sons murdered, and he had some of his wives murdered. And when Jesus was born, he had babies murdered. That's the same Herod that we're talking about today. And so Herod, he marries his brother's wife, brings her into his house. And everything is great for Herod and Herodias. Herod Antipas and Herodias. Philip, he's on the outs now. He's got to go find another wife. And Archelaus, that's a whole other story. And life is really good for Herod Antipas and Herodias until John the Baptist shows up. John the Baptist had one very simple message. He walked around all day long and said, "Stop sinning. Stop sinning. Just stop sinning. Just stop it. The people loved John the Baptist. Even Herod Antipas liked John the Baptist. But his ill-gotten wife, Herodias, she wasn't a fan. And just when John the Baptist is doing everything right, he's doing everything right. In fact, John has a very famous cousin. And when he's out preaching the gospel, he's doing Jesus stuff. Look what Herod does to him in Mark chapter 6, verse number 17. Herod sent some soldiers to arrest and imprison John as a favor to Herodias, this woman that he marries. She had been his brother Philip's wife, but Herod had married her. I'm telling you, people don't always think with their brains. Sometimes they think with their bodies. And that whole kind of concept has been going on as long as humanity and sin has been on the face of the earth. And so Herodias does not like John the Baptist because of what he's saying. The next verse says, John had been telling Herod, it's against God's law for you to marry your brother's wife. Seems like a no-brainer, doesn't it? Look at the result, verse 19. Herodias, that's the new wife of Herod Antipas. Herodias bore a grudge against John and wanted to kill him. But without Herod's approval, she was powerless. And here's why. Because Herod respected John, knowing him as a good and holy man. He protected him. This is John the Baptist. His famous cousin is Jesus. John the Baptist walks around saying, you need to repent of your sins because Jesus is coming. The Messiah is coming. And he went and he prepared the way. He did everything right. John was a holy man and a good man and a righteous man, and he did everything right. But now he's in prison. He's in jail. It would be really a great time for my cousin to show up. I mean, Jesus, you've done a lot of great miracles and everything, and yoo-hoo, here I am in jail, just saying. It would be awesome if you came right now. Some of you are in a prison. You've been trying to do some things right. You've been trying to live right, act right, live upright. You've been trying to do everything right. But it hasn't changed your circumstances, and in fact, you feel like you're in this prison right now. That's where John was, for doing everything right. Matthew, he's one of the gospel writers. He chimes in on this story a little bit. And the way Matthew puts it, he reveals something about John the Baptist I think all of us can relate to. He reveals this human side of John the Baptist that can seem so distant in history. Look what Matthew says in Matthew chapter 11, verse number 2. John the Baptist, who was in prison, heard about all the things the Messiah was doing. Pause right there. He's heard about the miracles that Jesus has done. He heard about Jesus opening blind eyes. He heard about Jesus feeding the thousands of people out of a couple of fish and loaves of bread. He heard about dead people being raised back to life again. But I'm in prison. I can only pick up the newspaper and read about it. I'm not really there. I don't see it from my own eyes. And so he saw all these things, but remember, he's in prison. And so John had some followers of his own, some that he was mentoring and discipling. And he brings them in, he calls them into the jail and says, hey guys, come here. I want you to go to Jesus. I want you to go to Jesus. He sent those disciples. I want you to go to Jesus, and I want you to ask him this. Are you the Messiah that we've been expecting, or should we keep looking for somebody else? I imagine the disciples, John's disciples said, wait. Like, we've seen the miracles. We've seen it. Really? You want us to go ask him if he's the Messiah? I mean, it's like, okay. But isn't it true that you get into dire circumstances? Isn't it true that sometimes there's tragic things that happen in our life? Isn't it true that there are things that occur in our hearts, our minds, in our marriages, in our homes, in our families that cause us to wonder, is Jesus really who he says he is? Because I've prayed and I asked him to step in and intervene, and nothing. I mean, Jesus, look at my marriage right now. Where are you? Jesus, look what's going on in my home right now. Where are you? Come on, Jesus. I need something that's real. It feels like you're not even there. Again, John's disciples, you want us to go back and ask the Messiah if he's really the Messiah? It's amazing how in America today, agnosticism, simply put, agnosticism is there might be a God, but you have to prove to me there's a God. That belief system is rising exponentially in America today. They're asking the same question that John the Baptist was asking. And isn't it true, church? Isn't it true? Isn't it true that when our circumstances change, so does our faith? Come on. Remember going to college? Remember when you went to college? You had faith when you were growing up and you're in mom and dad's home. Now you go to college and you get to college, more fun, less faith. Isn't it true that when you got that job and suddenly you had the job and you started making more money than you'd ever made in your life? More money, less faith. You suddenly have all of these friends around you and life is going so well right now. More friends, less faith. Isn't it true? You feel great, physically fit, you're at the gym, you're working out, you're taking care of yourself, better health, less faith. But then isn't it also true on the other side that when we start to lose some things, we start to lose our money, now we need more faith. I'm starting to lose my marriage. Suddenly I'm in the Bible. I need more faith. I'm in church more often. I'm praying a whole lot more. I start to lose my health. I've got a diagnosis. The doctor sent me a letter. I got a phone call. He said, this is what's going on in your body. Less health, more faith. Isn't it true that when our circumstances change, all of a sudden our faith changes as well? But there's something inside of you, there's something inside of me that needs to know that what I've heard about God is real. I need it real for my life. I don't need it real for your life. I need it real for my life. It's so easy to lose our faith when God seems so far away. When we ask the question, are you the one I should be praying to? Because it doesn't seem to be happening right now. And so John the Baptist, he asks this question, are you the Messiah or should we be expecting somebody else? Jesus, you know what? He doesn't say, yeah, I'm the Messiah. He also doesn't say, yeah, I'm the Messiah, and I'm busting you out of this place at 2 o'clock in the morning. Doesn't answer that way. In fact, the answer that we're going to read in just a moment to John's question is the answer all of us need to hear when it feels like God is so far away. Because God seems so far away when you see things from the perspective of your circumstantial prison. God can seem so far away when you're looking at him only from your circumstantial prison. And so John asks the question, are you the one? The disciples are there and they're standing with Jesus and Jesus, this is kind of awkward. We already know the answer to this, but John sent us to ask you, are you the one that we're supposed to be expecting, or is there somebody else to come? Jesus didn't even bat an eye. Look how Jesus answered in verse number 4. Jesus told the disciples of John the Baptist, he said, you go back to John and you tell him what you've heard and seen. Pause right there. You tell him what you have witnessed. This is not a theory. It's not a pamphlet, it's not a brochure, it's not a book, it's not a principle, it's not a seminar, it's not a belief system. You go back and tell them what you have heard and seen. This is real stuff. This is proof in the pudding kind of stuff. And this is what I want you to tell them. He goes on to say in verse 5, the blind see, the lame walk, those with leprosy are cured, the deaf hear, the dead are raised to life, and the good news is being preached to all the people. And then I think they kind of stood there silently. I'm just imagining the disciples of John like, okay, that's kind of what we thought. We'll go back and tell John just what you said. And I would imagine them turning around, thank you, Jesus, thank you. And they turn around, and then Jesus says, wait, one more thing. One more thing. Yeah? And then Jesus, what he says next is huge when God seems so far away. Come on in, guys. Come here. One more thing. Look what he says in verse 6. God blesses those who do not fall away because of me. What? What? Yeah. God blesses those who don't fall away because of me. Wait, let me get this straight, Jesus. You're saying because of me. You're saying you might allow things to come into our life that causes us to question you? Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. And if you stick with me, Jesus says, if you stick with me in those circumstances when you could be tempted to fall away, God blesses those people. See, God is paying attention to what's going on in your life. And there might be those moments when the marriage looks like it's over with, and you just say, you know what, I tried God, and this is the thanks I get, I'm walking away, I'm done. I'm never going back to church ever again. Wait. You mean in a health situation, and I prayed, and the diagnosis, and I'm not getting better, and that whole kind of thing, God blesses people that stick with it and don't turn their back on it? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, there's times when all my friends might abandon me and I feel so alone and nobody understands and I just want to escape the pain. But I'll still go back to God and not refuse Him because I know there must be a context to what I'm feeling. You mean God blesses those kind of people? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You mean Jesus really, I just want to make sure I have this right. There are some things that you allow to come into our life that might make us question if you're really there? Yeah. And all of that is to say this, that your circumstances aren't an indication of how God sees you. Your circumstances do not indicate how God sees you. What we tend to do is think that when life is great and everything is going well, God must really be happy with me. But now I don't have a job, I don't have money, I don't have a home, I don't have a marriage, I can't find a spouse, I can't have a relationship, my health is failing, God must be mad at me. Your circumstances are not always an indication of how God sees you. The proof of how God sees you was proven when He put Jesus on the cross. For God so loved the world. That was proof of how God sees your marriage, how He sees your finances, how He sees you as an individual. He proved it by what He did on the cross. So what do you do when God feels like He's so far away from your home, when He's so far away from your prayers, when He's so far away from you? What are we supposed to do in those situations? We need to remember when everything looks like it's wrong, we need to remember everything that's right. When you feel like life is absolutely wrong, you need to remember what's right. When you feel like Jesus hasn't done anything, you need to remember everything that Jesus has done. To do that, sometimes you have to look outside your prison doors. Sometimes you have to get your face right up to the bars of that jail cell window and press your face as hard as you can against those bars to look outside of your prison and see that Jesus is not dead. Jesus is not absent. He might be silent, but He's not absent. That Jesus is still saving souls, that Jesus is still doing miracles in Djibouti, that Jesus is still doing miracles in other people's families, that Jesus is still meeting with His people in church, that Jesus is still bringing people to a saving knowledge of Him. All of this stuff still goes on. It's still going on. Back to the story of John the Baptist, the man who did everything right. He's in prison. One day Herod throws a big party, invites all the dignitaries from the region to come. They all get really boozed up, you know. Wine is flowing, tons of food around there. And you know, when people are drinking, they tend not to use the best judgment. Have you ever noticed that? Nobody ever comes to my office and says, Pastor, since I started drinking, I think I'm making wiser financial decisions. I think my marriage is better. You know, these guys are all drunk. Herod sits there all proudly, his beautiful wife Herodias next to him. Party's going on. And then the music starts. And the daughter of Herodias, we would assume her to be very beautiful, teenage girl, begins to dance before all of the guests that are there. I would imagine the men were aroused by what they saw. Certainly, Herod was amazed. Under the influence of alcohol, he brings her over and he says, that was, thank you. That was amazing. It was awesome. He said, what do you want? I will give you anything you want, even up to half of my kingdom. He's like, it's like winning the lottery, right? How many young ladies in here would love it if your dad said, you can have anything you want, even up to half of all the money I have in the bank? You know, most dads be going, that'd be like 78 cents. Go ahead, baby. It's like, whatever, you know? She's thinking, she's going, iPhone X? Concert tickets? New car? Like, I don't know what to ask for. Nobody's ever given me an option like that before. And so she goes to her mother, Herodias, the one who bore a grudge against John the Baptist. She says, Mom, what should I ask for? Mom says, ask for the head of John the Baptist to be delivered here on a platter. There's no follow-up to that conversation. Ew. I mean, we don't know how she responded. All we know is that Herod was grieved when he heard the request because he feared John and respected John. So a couple of guards went to the prison. Whatever posture or position John was in, the axe came down and John's head rolled to the floor. They put it on a platter and brought it to Herod's daughter. She carried the platter with John's head on it to her mother Herodias, the man who did everything right. A little while later, John's cousin Jesus was going to be in the Garden of Gethsemane, a wooded area. He got down on his face on the ground and he began to pray, God, I don't want to be crucified I don't want to be crucified. I don't want to go through what I'm about to face. But it's not my will. It's your will that needs to be done. In all of those episodes, be it with John the Baptist or Jesus the Messiah, not once did God move from center on his throne. God was still in charge. God still had a plan. God still had an agenda. God did not walk away. There's a secret message in the verse that we read. There's a secret message in the verse we read. When Jesus said, God blesses those who don't fall away because of me. We could read right over it. We could gloss right over it. There's a secret message in that verse. Guess who those are? You and me. We are in that verse. God blesses those. Your version of the Bible might say God blesses anyone. It doesn't matter if it's a those or an anyone. It includes you. It includes me. God blesses those who don't fall away. God blesses the people who stick with him regardless of what things look like and feel like in their life. When you're in the deepest pit, the darkest valley, the lowest spot in life, and you stick to it and you say, I don't care what I feel, what I'm facing. I don't care what disaster strikes me. I don't care what choices and decisions somebody else makes. I don't care how it affects me. I don't care what happens to my faith, to my health, to my family, to my marriage. None of that. I know that God has to be securely seated on the throne of my heart. And when we have that stick-to-itiveness, God blesses that. Blessed by a God who's paying attention even when it feels like he isn't. God might be silent when you're done praying, but he's not absent. I'll bet in that prison cell, even though it's not recorded for us in the Bible, I'll bet you John the Baptist prayed. I'll bet he prayed. You say, Pastor, what am I supposed to do? because this describes my life to a T. I would just recommend you do this. When everything looks like it's going wrong, remember who can do everything right. His name is Jesus. He is not an option. He is the only option when we have nowhere else to go. Sometimes we have to put ourselves outside of our prison. Sometimes it's so easy to focus on all that is wrong in our life, and what we need to do for a few moments is see what God is doing right in the lives of a whole lot of people around this world. It's so easy to only see the walls of our own prison. In the New Testament, in the book of Acts, there were two men that were put into prison for doing the right things. They were preaching the good news, just like John was. They were put in prison. And in that prison cell, they started to sing. They started to worship. And when they started to worship, what worship was doing for them in that moment was reminding them of everything that Jesus was doing right to help them forget about everything that looked wrong. Paul and Silas are there, and they're bound in chains. You know what they did? They started singing, "Here I am worshiping you, all I am worshiping you." They started to worship. Guess what happened to the chains? Chink. And the prison doors swung open. Sometimes when we feel the least like worshiping is when we need to do it the most.